Hey cats, what's happening? I got a story for you. Well, first of all, you ever looked at your dad's workbench, or take mine for instance? I'm getting pretty old, so just say let's look at an old man's workbench. It's amazing what you might find. And some of the stuff you're going to look at and go, what the heck? Where did this come from? What the heck's he doing with this? So anyway, I'm down there the other day and I'm going through some stuff. So here's the manual for an electric impact wrench, which I don't even have anymore. The warranty for a pump, which I don't even know what that was for. Plans for a shed. A catalog for caning and basketry, for making baskets. A calendar from 1948. Check that out. Don't ask me what I'm doing with all this stuff. Yeah, so I'm going through all these papers and stuff that I have. Stacks of papers down there and documents. I don't remember what I was looking for. You won't believe what I found. I gotta show you this. Check this out. Now, I know what you're thinking. You go, what, Itchy? It's a picture of a chopper. Exactly, that's exactly what it is. Only this picture is about 50 years old. It was taken out of an old Easy Riders magazine. Now, where did I get this? Well, there's a story that goes with it, but this was the picture when I was 14 years old that I had pinned up on a wall right next to my bed. When I laid in bed, that thing was right there on the wall, right next to my pillow. How does a 14-year-old kid get a picture out of Easy Riders? You know, it isn't like my mom and dad were going to go out and buy me an Easy Riders magazine. And we lived out in the country. We lived in a very rural area, and we rented a house from the park system. The house that we lived in was part of a farm complex. Now, we just rented the house, so we didn't have dibs to any of the other farm buildings, but the park used them for maintenance purposes. They actually had a mounted police unit, and Cleveland Police also had a mounted unit, and they would bale the hay to feed the horses. So they had baling equipment, tractors and stuff not stored in some of these buildings. And then one of the buildings we called the tractor barn, and it was a barn just for equipment alone. And it was locked up pretty tight. They had a padlock on the door so you couldn't get in there, but kids that we were, boys, and there was a few of us, we had our methods of getting in there. If you went around back, there was a couple boards that you could pry out, and we could squeeze in and get inside the tractor barn. And then we would go in there and play on the old tractors. Some of them were really antiques to the tractors of today. But as a lot of the old tractors had a toolbox attached to the fender or to the tractor somewhere. And the workers that used the equipment a lot of times would put magazines in those toolboxes. So as curious boys, we always knew where to find some cool magazines and got quite an education from the tractor barn, let me tell you. But anyway, one day I went in there and I found an Easy Riders magazine, and I was pretty thrilled because I was always infatuated with motorcycles. And I cut that picture out and I taped it to the wall beside my bed, and it was there for many years until I left. Now, I have no idea how I kept it all these years without losing it or having it thrown away. I don't even know how it ended up in the papers in my workbench over all these years. Didn't even know it was there, and I just stumbled on it. So I thought that was a pretty cool find. Even though it's just a picture glued to some red construction paper. It's pretty brittle over the years, but nonetheless. So as kids, living under the strict tutelage of my father, we were made to go out and get jobs. And we did that by mowing lawns from little old ladies that were members of the church. And we would ride our bicycles or our mini bike wherever we had to go to work to mow these lawns. Well, one day I was mowing a lawn over off of a state route that was a couple miles away from our home. And along that route, right at the base of a long, big hill, big grade there, real steep, long grade, was the yard that I was mowing. So I had finished mowing the yard, but while I was mowing, I kept seeing all these motorcycles going by. Like, not just a couple, but like one after the other. And then sometimes there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 all in a group. And I was just, completely enthralled by that. I thought that was the coolest thing. I wondered what the heck was going on. What were all the motorcycles there for? This is really cool. So it's time to go home, and I had finished mowing the lawn, and I had to go up this great big hill. So I was pushing my bicycle up this hill because it was so, long, steep grade. I couldn't ride up that steep of a grade with my bike. It wasn't geared for that kind of pedaling. I was up near the top, and at that point I sat up on the side of the road there on that little hillside and was watching the motorcycles coming by. Well, here came one of these outlaws, and he was coming over the crest of the hill. As he crested the top of the hill, he let go of the handlebars, and he put his hands out like he was flying. Well, as he come over the top of that hill, a gust of wind hit him square in the chest, and he went off the bike backwards. He went completely off the back of his motorcycle. Well, the Harley kept going on down the hill, all on its own. It went all the way right down the center line, and as it got down to the bottom of the grade, it slowly drifted off to the right, went down through the ditch, came up over a little rise, and ended up going right into the river. Well, the biker, he did like about 3 barrel rolls and jumped up on his feet, brushed the gravel off of him, looked him over pretty quick. He didn't look like he was seriously injured or anything. And he took off running lickety-split for all he was worth down the hill, trying to chase his bike, which I think was kind of a worthless case at that point. But I didn't stick around to see what happened. I had to be home for dinner. We were at the dinner table that night, and I was telling the story about all the motorcycles I saw, and I told my mom and dad about how this guy, fell off the back of his bike, and his bike went down the hill. And my dad, very, very somber, he said, boys, there is a outlaw motorcycle club that has moved into town, and they've taken over a farm just up the road on that state route. And they're planning a war with another outlaw club. And I don't want you guys going anywhere near there, so just stay out of there because it's bad news. The police are handling it right now, and we don't want you guys going anywhere near there. Well, that's all my dad had to say, because at that point, the next day we were all over it. I went and got my buddies, and we're like, hey, there's a motorcycle gang up here in the field, and if we go around and cut in the back way, we can go right up there where they are and check it out. So we got the mini bike out and took off up this up our road and cut down this little cul-de-sac, this little dead-end street, and then followed this trail through the woods and came out in the back of this farmer's field, and boom, right in the middle of the outlaw biker camp. The bikers didn't even think anything about it. They probably thought we were one of their kids messing around on a mini bike or something, They were totally undisturbed by it, and as we just kind of rode right through there, did a loop, and went right back out again. And they were just camping out, had some tents set up, and their bikes were sitting around, and they had little fires where they were cooking over the fire and stuff. Just a nice little family biker camp out. Now, as the story goes, of course, I have researched this, and I cannot find any real record of the event ever taking place, but the locals do remember it. And everybody has a kind of a twisted story of how it went about. Of course, the police chief will tell you that he went in there and strong-armed them and told them, you gotta get out of town or else. And they got frightened, and they split, and they got out of there, and that was the end of that, and I took care of it. that's the police chief's story. But did that really happen? I think the bikers were there for about 3 days, and they finally got their little camp out of their system. They realized that there wasn't going to be anything happening. There was a potential for trouble, but it never erupted. The other club never engaged with them, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. If you look back in history, around the Cleveland area at that time, there were some biker wars. I believe this was like around 1968, 69, somewhere in that area. To be honest with you, I don't remember the exact date, but I'm going to guess it was about that year, 1968. And I'm not going to name any clubs because I don't have any facts. I don't have any facts to back it up, but I do know that it really did happen. But anyway, I thought that was pretty cool, and it's just a memory I had from way back of a potential biker war that as kids we had no idea, what that even meant. We were just enthralled with the idea of motorcycles and motorcycle clubs, and of course we called them gangs back then, but we all know that MCs are like to be called clubs, that gangs are inner city kids, that totally different monster there. Anyway, that's my story for today. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, check out some of my other videos. Hit the like button if you like it, and share it with somebody else. Say, hey, check this guy out, man. This is funny, or we like this guy, or maybe you don't like me. Leave me some nasty comments. Some of you always do. Yeah, I know how that works. But if you haven't yet, subscribe, and I'll keep you up to date on the latest videos. Hey, ride hard and die free.